What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA show. And today's video is all about this brewing drama between Anthony Smith and the Jaxxon Podcast. Let me give you guys a little bit of context as to what's happening. I'm going to give you my thoughts and my feedback as we go along. I literally just learned about this and just watched these clips. So a lot of my reaction is essentially going to be on the fly, and I'll give you my thoughts as we kind of go along and listen to these clips. For me, it'll be a second time, but I briefly listened to everything already. So just to give you the context, Bryce Mitchell was invited onto the Jaxxon Podcast. Now, this was apparently an existing appointment, an existing show appearance that was set before Bryce made his very controversial statements on his podcast, Arc Insanity. I think that's since been removed. So Bryce Mitchell got a lot of heat for those statements about AH and all that stuff. Right after that, he went on the Jaxxon Podcast. I was shocked. I couldn't even believe that they dropped that episode right after Bryce Mitchell made those controversial statements. But all of a sudden, that episode appeared. I think it was live for maybe 12 hours, and it got pulled down. Some of the reasons as to why it got pulled down apparently were that they were getting a ton of negative comments. Now, I think I watched a little bit of it. I never watched it in full initially, so I didn't really know what all of the fuss was about, but I eventually was able to finally watch the entire episode. And essentially, I think what a lot of people were upset about, and this is very interesting that Anthony Smith comments on this, but what people were very upset about, now granted, Bryce triggered a ton of people. The UFC was upset, Dana White was upset, obviously many Jewish people were deeply offended by what he said, and in regards to the Holocaust and whatnot. And on the show, and it's kind of crazy because as inflammatory as those statements were and as mad as people were actually more mad at Bear from the Jaxxon Podcast than Bryce Mitchell. And I thought this was kind of interesting because, again, Bryce was getting a lot of heat, but the way that Bear treated him just did not sit well with a ton of people. It was bizarre, I have to admit. When you actually watch that entire episode, if you were able to see it before they pulled it down, it was like, it just didn't make any sense. The way that Bear just would not deviate from administering almost like a lecture for the entire duration of the podcast. And I get where Bear's coming from, but like, what's the point of having him on there if you're just going to sit there and lecture him and try and like be his moral? It was weird. It was very weird. And I thought the way that Rampage was carrying out the interview made a lot more sense. He was, because like Bear also said they invited him on and then they wouldn't let him talk and explain himself, which is what he was trying to do. He's trying to apologize to people and try and explain his perspective, and whether or not you agree, whether or not you accept his apology or wanted to hear it or not, it just seemed bizarre to me that you would even invite him on and then be like, yeah, but you're not allowed to talk about this, you're not allowed to apologize, you're not allowed to explain yourself. It was weird, and that rubbed people the wrong way. People are very upset with the Jaxxon Podcast and with Bear right now. I think also for pulling that interview down, people were upset and triggered by that as well. So anyways, this is the backstory. This is the context. Now, yesterday on Anthony Smith's podcast, On Paper, he actually talked about this, and he was gave some pretty harsh criticisms about the Jaxxon Podcast in relation to this episode, but also in general in terms of how he feels they treat fighters. He feels like they made fun of him after having him on as well, and he just thinks that they do a disservice to fighters. I don't know if I agree with that take. I feel like they actually are pretty respectful. Yeah, they're just honest. I don't think they're clowning fighters. They're just honest. You have guys like TJ Dillashaw, who is sharing his honest opinion. Part of the reason why people like the podcast so much is because the guys on there are not afraid to give their opinions. But anyways, he goes off and lays into this episode, but then also talks more broadly about Bear and Rampage, and he goes in after them pretty much. And then Rampage responds, and he gives a very, very harsh response to Anthony Smith. There's going to be a lot of F-bombs. I don't know if this is even going to get monetized as a result. We'll see. But I'm just going to show you these clips in their entirety. So first, we're going to hear Anthony bring up this episode and the fact that it was pulled down, and we will start there, and then we'll continue. Here we go.
I absolutely disagree with Bear and the Jaxxon Podcast bringing Bryce Mitchell. I'm guaranteeing you they paid him. They flew him out there. They said themselves that they'd been trying to get him on for a year. They knew that this controversy had just happened. You know what you're getting when you bring Bryce Mitchell on. That's your responsibility to know that. You don't get to bring him on there and then fucking dunk on him in front of the whole world when he's already down and not give him an opportunity to defend himself. And I don't think that Bryce was going to. I called Bryce today. I called him today.
Did you?
I did. I called him today.
And by the way, I think what Anthony just said, I think that is why a lot, like he just stated precisely why so many people were triggered and upset. The people that did watch the podcast.
To just be like, what the hell is happening here, bro? What are we doing? And he said, everything I just said to you about how I felt about Bryce Mitchell is what he said about himself. That he just, that he's not a Nazi, that he doesn't hate Jewish people, and that it came out in a way that he didn't mean it, and he gets all amped up and he's trying to tell a story, and he's like, again, I'm not going to justify what he's saying, but they didn't give him an opportunity to explain himself. Then don't bring him on. Don't bring him on and then censor what he's saying. Let him speak his truth. That's your fucking responsibility to know that if you bring Bryce Mitchell on, he's about goddamn liable to say something crazy.
And I think he makes a really valid point. If you're going to have him on, what's the point of having him on otherwise? The other thing that I'll say, this was my personal reaction. I felt like it just was weird. It was Bear lecturing him constantly, just from this bizarre. And this was my feeling. I don't know if people agree or disagree with me. It felt a little disingenuous. It felt like he was lecturing him from upon high. And I'm not saying the points he was making were necessarily flawed or wrong per se, but I felt like the reason why he was doing it was because he said, okay, we're going to have him on here, but I don't want people to be mad at me for having him on here and thinking I'm giving him a platform. So I'm going to make sure to lay into him as much as possible, as opposed to it coming from a sincere place of just disgust. And I want to correct this. And I want to really show you the right way. It just was weird. That's how I felt. I felt like it was performative. And I think people picked up on that. People can sense that. And I think that's the other reason why people were so upset. Like if he was literally just on there and enraged and being himself, I don't think people would have had this negative reaction. I think people felt like it was performative. That's my thoughts. Anyways, let me let Anthony keep going.
But you don't get to like shit all over him when he's already down and censor what he's about to talk about. Or if he wants to explain himself in a certain situation, dunk on him. And then you catch some heat for it and you pull the episode down, say it with your fucking chest. Like
I think this made it worse too. The fact that they put it out there, they got a horrible negative reaction, and then they yanked it. That's going to trigger people even more. And I'm sure in retrospect, they realized they probably should have just left it up there, because I think people downloaded it or whatever, and it is still getting out there. If probably more people are watching it now than if they would have just left it up there. But anyways, yeah, I think that was a mistake, and I think they probably learned from it. I mean, look, we're all learning in real time. They had this podcast for what, like a year and a half. But anyways, I'm going to let him finish his thoughts here.
Bring fighters on, you shit on it. It happened to me. You brought me on. You're super cool to me. I had a good time. I love Rampage. He's my favorite fighter. I've said that for years. You've heard me say that 100 times. Rampage is my favorite fighter. You bring me on, I have an amazing time. And then, like, I don't know, several months later, you're on there with Dillashaw fucking making fun of me. That's what they do. That's their thing.
I will defend the podcast a little bit here. But again, I get he's coming from a different perspective, but it wasn't that they were making fun of him. It was Dillashaw that was doing that. I felt like Rampage and Bear were trying to get his back, actually. And maybe Anthony interpreted it as them being in on the joke, because it was sort of like a upbeat. There was an upbeat mood to it, and they were kind of being playful. They were like, "Yo, hey, stop! Don't talk about Anthony that way." It wasn't anything like that, right? So there was a playful vibe to it. So I can understand how I could interpret it that way, but that wasn't my read. I didn't think they were all clowning on him together. It was just Dillashaw making a point. And again, it wasn't even Dillashaw clowning him. It was him being honest and telling his truth and telling what he thinks about Anthony Smith as a fighter, whether you agree or disagree. But that's how I interpreted that.
And honestly, it's less Rampage. He's kind of just the funny ha-ha guy, and he just laughs around stuff.
Right.
They're just not great to fighters. They make fun of a lot of people. They did the same shit to Ian Gary. when he was supposed to go on the show. And then they spent the show before that calling him a cuck. Whether you think Ian Gary's a cuck or not, you can't bring the motherfucker on the show the next episode after calling him a cuck and making fun of his family dynamic or him and his wife and his kid. This guy's got fucking kids. Then Ian gets on, social media and gets all pissed about it. And then they walk that shit back. I don't agree with that.
We're going to go to the next clip now. So this is another clip of Anthony Smith also still talking about the Jaxxon podcast. And you can see this is almost transitioned from talking about the Bryce Mitchell show being pulled down to just a general attack or critique, you could say, of the Jaxxon podcast and the way they carry themselves and interview fighters, etc. So now this is one more statement where he's almost addressing Bear directly. Check this out.
Like, sometimes you got to look inward. Like, and I hope that's what they're doing. Like, you have to look inward a little bit. Like, this guy was being pegged a Nazi for 2 weeks, and now people are mad at you for how you treated him. That says a lot about what you guys are doing. And I don't always say shit. I get plenty of heat myself. Sometimes you got to live with that shit. I say a lot of stupid shit. You got to eat it.
I mean, but that's what comes with being a public figure and having a platform and having.
So there it is. Anthony Smith just goes to town. I mean, and again, I think he's again speaking his truth. He's speaking what he thinks. I didn't take it as such a crazy attack on Rampage and Bear, maybe more so on Bear, not so much on Rampage. Then Rampage and Bear, this is a little snippet from Rampage's YouTube channel. Shout out to Rampage, where he does not mince words and he responds to Anthony Smith. Check this out. This is crazy. There's a lot of a lot of curse words here. Like I said, we'll see what happens to this video, but I'm just going to play it. Here we go.
We'd never fuck up again, but most likely we're gonna make more mistakes. I love doing this podcast. This podcast got me back into MMA, and I've met a lot of fighters since I've started doing this fucking podcast, and I've always stayed away from the fighters because I'm different from y'all, and that's the motherfucking problem right here. Me being different from y'all. I saw this fucking post that what's his name, Anthony Smith did. I saw it this morning. Fucking pissed me off when TJ sat right motherfucking here and said that you would never be champion and said that you fucking gave up. Bear and I fucking had your back. And that's why we were saying Lionheart with a fucking nickname like Lionheart, not Lionheart. And you took it as I was making fun of you and Bear and I making fun of you. Bear and I actually liked your bitch ass, but now you a motherfucking bitch. Because at first I didn't say shit because I DM'd you. Because I looked at it, I could say, oh, okay, I can see how he could think that I was making fun of him too. So I DM'd you. And I fucking said to you in the DM, like, look here, bro, I wasn't making fun of you. Because I could have made fun of you. Motherfuckers make fun of fighters, we make fun of each other. Yeah, I'm a comedian, pretend to be a motherfucking fighter. But the problem is, motherfucker, I really can fight. And I hope I don't see your motherfucker. I hope I come down when I see you, because motherfuckers like you get bitch smacked for real. Because you did some bitch shit. You left me on red on your fucking DMs when I tried to fucking explain to you I wasn't making fun of your bitch ass. Because I could have made fun of you when Khalil Roundtree pieced your motherfucking ass up, how you doing a chicken dance, but I can't make fun of shit like that because my last motherfucking fight, I shit the bed, my fat ass out laying out on the motherfucking ring. People make fun of me. I got thick motherfucking skin. Motherfucker make fun of me when Vanderlei knocked me out. I'm hanging on the motherfucking ropes. All MMA fighters and fans and everybody make fun of me motherfucking each other. Like, yeah, I make fun of Ian McGarry bitch ass because it was a mistake. Or the shit I did with Ariel Helwani and shit like that. But that's me. I like to have fun. I like to be positive. I like to joke around. If fighters got a thick skin and you don't like this shit, don't come on the fucking show. I don't give a fuck either way. Like this, yeah, this is the MMA podcast, but we can fucking interview comedians, fucking football players, actors. We get a lot of motherfuckers asking to be on the show right now. But right now, we just sticking most to fighters. You know what I'm saying? So I'm telling y'all, bitch ass motherfuckers, soft ass motherfuckers out there, y'all need to chill the fuck out and quit being little bitches. Yeah, TJ shouldn't say nobody shouldn't be a fucking champion, but that's TJ, and I respect him for that. He's standing on business. You know what I'm saying? He's one of the greatest to ever do it in his motherfucking weight class. Some of you guys are just bitches. Yeah, we fuck up sometimes, and yeah, we got nothing against Bryce. And I hear all this racist shit y'all saying about me and all this shit. I don't give a fuck about that bullshit. Some of y'all just fucking bitches. Y'all need to quit being bitches. Have fun. Make light of shit. Laugh some motherfucking time. Quit being so hatred. Quit being so fucking racist. Quit thinking your fucking opinion matters over other motherfuckers' opinion. We just trying to have fun over here at Jaxxon.
Boom. That's it. He got heated. Haven't seen Rampage get that heated in a long time. So there you go. I think Rampage's points are pretty valid. He's saying, "Hey, look, again, as I mentioned earlier, the stuff that Anthony Smith is getting upset about, that was TJ, you know, in all fairness, and I do think they were trying to defend him. I do think maybe Anthony misinterpreted the way that they were responding, but it is what it is. TJ was stating his opinion, and he's saying, hey, maybe he shouldn't have said that, but can't control him, right? He's one of the best to ever do it in his weight class. I get what Rampage is getting at. I think both of them made some interesting points, but I kind of, if I had to side one way or the other in terms of the way they treat fighters and in terms of the Jaxxon podcast in general as an entity, I don't look at them as a podcast that goes out of the way to clown or offend fighters. I think that they bring them on, they have a lighthearted tone, and they're very honest. You have guys like TJ, even Luke Rockhold. They're just honest, and sometimes that honesty can rub people the wrong way. I think Rampage makes a good point that people in this game need to have thicker skin. He talks about the clowning that he's received. So I think it's fair, but I also think Anthony makes some good points about that last episode that was pulled down, which these guys aren't even denying, really. I think they're accepting the role they played in that episode, in the way that they behaved, and then pulling it down, etc. So all in all, I think everybody's on the same page, except for now Rampage and Anthony look like their relationship is completely fractured. Again, going back though, Rampage made that point where he reached out to Anthony Smith. That is kind of weird that Anthony didn't respond. But if you now consider what happened between him and Michael Bisping and his communication issues, I bet you it just, not saying I'm excusing that. Yeah, he should have gotten back to Rampage, and that can rub people the wrong way. That would have rubbed me the wrong way. So that's something maybe he needs to work on. But I bet you it's part of that equation, not necessarily that he wanted to ignore Rampage. That's just a theory. Anyways, wild stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and make sure to click that like button if you did like this video. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.